Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and very soon more Diablo 4. Season 9's right around the corner, so I'm going to give you a refresher on what to expect. There's new powers, Nightmare Dungeon updates and escalations, lots of little changes and important things to be aware of. So here's everything you need to know to have that smooth and effective journey in this season, so let's get started. We begin with what you do before you start leveling. Making your new character, skipping the campaign and getting straight into the new seasonal content. You will have that normal difficulty choice. We recommend normal to start with, but you will jump up to hard or potentially higher if you have particularly good drops. Then you might consider jumping up to hard or higher. The simple rule here is if you're crushing enemies and blasting and it's going really well, then you can try a harder difficulty. If it slows you down a noticeable amount, then maybe it was too soon. Anyway, once you're in game, make sure you use the newer wardrobe button found in the inventory page and go to the pets tab to actually have one equipped. It'll pick up currency and material drops for you automatically, and maybe just one day it'll start equipped at the start of a season. Last thing here before you get going is to pop over to the den where the mercenaries are. Right from the start, you can have one helping you in the combat, but also actually start progressing its rep. Keep in mind, you have the mercenary unit currency, which you can use to buy items, which could help you get early aspects you need, or maybe even a relevant weapon. Okay, so for 1 to 15, we start with the side quest Raising Spirits in Kyovershad as usual. It's just north of the waypoint of the city. You speak with the guard buzzer and then go cheer the requested guards right next to it. This gives you a pile of herbs, so when you hit level 10, you can immediately craft an elixir. These provide small XP increases on monster kills while they're going, so you always want them active. There's two versions, the basic elixirs you get at level 10 for 5%, then the advanced elixirs at level 50 for 8%. So you progress to that when you're ready. But now we're ready to get going. Our first focus will be the new season questline, and as usual we follow this as far as you can whenever possible. The questline will introduce all the new main content, mechanics, powers and so on. It's important to focus on it whenever you can. You will be walled on its progression through the usual rep system, progress by engaging with new content and everything in the game really. But before we talk about that new content, you can't forget about the season journey. Back in Season 8, the season journey was updated in major ways. The battle pass is no longer as important for your leveling. That's because your season blessings come from the season journey. Those are passive benefits that really improve your progression through the game. The challenges in the journey are more specific now and grow in challenge chapter by chapter. But the early chapters are usually very easy and give you potent rewards like relevant aspects for your builds, materials to power you up sooner, on other drops, let alone the season blessings themselves, so it must be a priority. As a reminder, in a previous season they also updated the class passives, so you'll automatically unlock them the moment you hit the required level, assuming you've done that class's quest before. So at roughly level 15, you get a big power spike thanks to that class passive just being available. Just make sure you activate it. Some classes do get different benefits at different stages, like Necromancer when it gets the Golem. But yeah, that's 1 to 15 basically, setting up and blasting the season questline. This will take you into the new systems with a heavy focus on the new nightmare dungeons and those mechanics. So what's actually new there? What do you need to understand? We'll start with the nightmare dungeon update. You're going to find that the sigils are updated with new positive affixes that are more impactful. Increased materials, gems, gold. You'll find these kind of things in chests during the run. But more important for us is the Forgotten Wisdom affix. As it states, this just provides extra experience. What this means is that you've got these golden XP orbs that drop from enemies often, and that gives you a burst of XP when you collect them. Our goal then will be to do nightmare dungeons with this affix as much as possible, just to increase the potency of that leveling. You can get a lot of these sigils by doing early whispers, and also crafting them via sigil powder as usual. Plus, at the end of every nightmare dungeon you'll get another sigil, so maybe that'll have Forgotten Wisdom on it if you're lucky. Be aware that as always in these dungeons, you might find experience wells, which is going to be nice to have, and while you're going, you want to clear any and all events and extra objectives that you find. These often provide insane mob density and incredible XP for the time it takes. They're a huge boon to your leveling. So always open chests and use shrines as well. You might actually spawn an event on top of the ones you find. For more fresh content then, we have the Horadric Strongrooms as a permanent update for the game. After completing one of these Strongrooms, you get something called an Escalating sigil that leads into the new Nightmare Dungeon escalations. I'll explain in a moment. But how do you find a Strongroom? Well, during any Nightmare Dungeon run, you might just bump into a gateway that takes you to the Strongroom. Initially here, we'll kill some enemies, and then you'll get these pillars spawning in to choose between. Basically, you're choosing what type of test is going to happen, and you get to choose up to 3 of these to mod the Strongroom. These are generally positive perks for the run that let you focus on specific objectives to maximize. When we begin, a timer like say Undercity or the Old Gauntlet will appear, and in that timer you need to kill tons of enemies and gather the resource Attunement. There's 6 stages to that, and each stage gives you better rewards the higher you're at, so you want as much Attunement as possible. So yeah, you'll have to kill enemies sure, but your specific case is what mods you picked and what you want to focus on to get the most Attunement. It all ends with a mini boss though, which when defeated gives you the stash. So that'll be a pile of drops, currency, mats, and yeah, the Escalation Sigil. So now we know about an Escalation Sigil, what do we do with it? Well, it just takes us into a special Nightmare Dungeon challenge, the Nightmare Dungeon Escalation. It's a scaling challenge that progresses. It's like 3 Nightmare Dungeons back to back, which stacks up the affixes and affliction of the past dungeon, rewarding more and more, but challenging you more and more. At the end of each dungeon, we have a pillar that tells you about the next challenge, the good and bad that's going to come. And they told us that apparently on Torment 4, this can challenge you even beyond that. But yeah, either way, when you reach the 3rd and final dungeon of the Escalation, you might find yourself facing Astaroth, which is a returning boss from the original story. It's my understanding that this is only possible in Torment level 1 and above, so for initial leveling you probably won't deal with him. But just to mention him, he's going to be that familiar fight from the story, but with a new second phase that changes things because he dismounts. Looks like quite the tight area of play, requiring some careful movement, but then you'll have to face him properly in his new form. You'll only find him in these escalations though, rather than say him being a new lair boss, but his reward should be well worth the effort. But yeah, that's the dungeon stuff. Let's now do a quick and simple word on the new powers and jewels of Season 9. The new season power system is the Horadric spellcraft, similar to say boss powers, but these you activate by using class skills based on what you choose to activate it on, kind of like the mercenary supports. It's a lot more complicated than we're used to with power systems, so very simply, you've got 3 elements that combine into something potent. The 3 are catalysts, infusions, and arcana. Catalysts are like the core power, these are what activate when you use the skill you picked, but infusions set the catalyst power damage type. This means your class could access different damage types that it usually wouldn't be able to. But then arcana modify the catalyst to grant other bonuses, like barriers or giving you an unstoppable effect, that type of thing. Arcanas also affect your jewels, so let's highlight that. So Horadric jewels are very similar to say the occult gems of Season 7. You're just slotting these special jewels in a gem slot and you get a pile of armor and element resistance from that. But based on the jewel that you put in, you get different perks, like increased damage over time effects or increasing the catalyst damage you've chosen. These do come with negatives if it's particularly good though, so there'll be some balance here. But yeah, that's about as simple as I can explain the 2 new borrowed power systems. Let's get back to the overall guide. Let's talk about the next stage of leveling, which is around the time you're level 15 and pushing up towards 50. At this point, it's going to be great to consider the basic setup for your leveling build of choice. So you could go do a quick run at this point for some normal difficulty dungeons with the codex reward for the key aspect or key aspects of the build you're running. And then you can just slap that on by imprinting it on an amulet, rings, maybe even gloves, since you can stick with these for a while. Meanwhile, things like your weapon, that constantly changes as you keep equipping the higher eye level weapons you keep finding, so probably not a good idea to imprint on those. But as usual, if you do find a good defensive aspect, you could slap that on your helm, chest, or leg pieces. People always love the Juggernaut aspect for the raw armor that provides during leveling, but there's also Disobedience as another option. But yeah, you've just updated yourself at level 15-ish, you've got your class passive, you're a lot stronger now, what's next? I'd suggest you go for a focus on Whispers for Forgotten Wisdom Sigils. That way you can double up on lots of effectiveness, like doing Whispers inside of a Helltide to get increased rewards from Helltide drops and chests, but also getting Whispers done at the same time. All of this gives you a good chance to get those ideal sigils for Nightmare running. It's likely that the season journey will push you into Nightmare dungeons either way, but if you can do that with the Forgotten Wisdom XP perk, then yeah, that's better. Naturally, whenever you're doing the Nightmare dungeons, you might find a stronghold, and then you might end up doing an escalation when you find that. As a reminder, you'll continue with a heavy focus on the season journey here, where possible, to get those season blessings and any other perks they provide. But once again, whenever you can, consider jumping up to hard difficulty or higher if you're strong enough, but not if it slows you down in any noticeable way. Final tip here is just check in with your obol vendor in town and RNG roll weapons when possible. That will help you continue to push that eye level and spike your DPS. So you could do the same with a mercenary vendor in the den, since you've also got good odds of finding a good aspect there too. Right, for the last push of 50 to 60, This is probably when we'll do that classic stronghold strategy. On normal difficulty, you go clear strongholds because they provide massive XP, but the same amount if you're on higher difficulty. So you can do it super quick on normal and just bounce around them to get a big burst of XP. That's been a reliable strat for many seasons now, so it's probably going to be the same in Season 9. Around this section though, you might have found some tributes for the Undercity. In particular, you want the growth one because that's going to increase the XP of Undercity. But I will say they've doubled in value this time because they put much better rune drops in there, and so we want the runes for our build. Just something to think about. But yeah, here you just repeat the previous steps, keep pushing the season story, the journey, and progress your powers. But now we're about level 60, this is the stage we're going to push into Torment 1. That will require a pit clear of level 10. More than likely, you'll jump to penitent difficulty around this stage. And so keep in mind when you are level 60, you can get glyph drops. Nightmare dungeons are going to be a great source for that, but also RNG drops in the world like Helltide. Getting at least a good glyph in your first socket will be a big power spike. This is a great time to temper all of your gear in a cheap way for flat defense and damage bonuses. Obviously, percent bonuses are nice, but they become more potent when you stack stuff together. At low level and when you're under geared, flat numbers are more impactful. So imprint on your gear as well anything that's going to be impactful, and slap on any gems or runes in empty slots that you can. And if you really want to go hard, you can enchant to get the right affixes, but it's probably overkill. When ready though, complete pits until tier 10 and get Torment 1 going. Bringing us to the final section, Torment 1 to 4. In Season 9, the quality of drops are actually going to increase with the Torment level, further encouraging that progression. But your first priority when you're initially in Torment 1 is actually go do the layer bosses. Layer bosses was a new boss system in Season 8. You can go kill bosses for free now, but to get their loot, you need their respective keys to open the chest that spawns in. The keys come from relevant content to them, so if you want Grigore, you gotta do Helltides, or say Whispers for Farshan, the usual. While higher tier bosses require keys that drop from the lower tier bosses, as before. This is because the bosses are now separated by tiers, but the whole goal here is to hunt bosses that give you the uniques you need for your build. Which boss that's going to be will vary class to class and build to build, but if you're after anything specific, good idea to research who drops the unique you need. But don't forget when you're doing this that there's increased drops if you're killing the bosses while in a group. The bigger the group, the better. Lastly, for bosses, be aware that the higher the Torment level, the higher the chance for mythic drops, and the higher tier of boss, the higher those odds as well. So when we reach the true farming of bosses, you want to try to save your mats for any higher tier kills you can do. But yeah, outside of that focus, it'll be time for all the endgame activities in Season 9. Progressing the season questline whenever possible as before, and powering up your powers. But otherwise, you bounce between all the different content, whatever you need to do the most right now. That could mean nightmare dungeons for their glyph drop ray, or say fishing for escalations and strongholds. It could mean spending some time in the pits to get some glyph leveled up since you had a good one. Maybe you bounce between Helltides for Whispers and many gear drops at once, or while leveling up your paragon to get more power from that. Remember again in Season 9 the rune drop rates are up, especially in the Undercity, even if the tribute isn't focused on runes, though harmony should be really good. So the Undercity should be even more valuable in Season 9. As we go, we'll push closer to a full set of Ancestrals, but your main focus there will be an Ancestral weapon for eye level 800. For that, I recommend the Obel Gambler and the Den Merchant for any RNG you can get there. And yeah, whenever you're ready, you push the pit levels and get into higher tiers of Torment when you're on a power spike. You do that when you can function on the next tier and push it as early as possible. Just as a little warning on that, in Season 8 they made the Torment levels harder generally. They rebalanced the pits to challenges at lower levels, so if you miss Season 8, you want to be ready for that. But yeah, there you have it. That's my overview for Season 9 and the new leveling journey to endgame. I hope that gives you the confidence to get stuck in, but be aware we're going to be covering all things Season 9 in specifics as we get into it. So be sure to check back soon. Until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.